ఓం శ్రీ గురుభ్యో నమః. అందరికీ నమస్కారం. See, one disciple has asked his master this question: Master, in performing actions, how karma transforms into sin, and how do we get rid of that? How do we then redeem ourselves? Then the master said like this: First of all, let it be very clear. Lord Krishna says that it is not possible to renounce your karma. Even somebody who is doing nothing is doing something with their thoughts, with their speech, or with their actions. Now, that is established, he says. So, if you can perform those actions with a sense of detachment, you are redeemed, he says. Does that mean that we can go and hurt somebody and say, well, I did that with great detachment, so I am redeemed? Of course not, said the master. I think what happens is, when we talk about detachment, if you are truly detached, you are not driven by the outcome, no question about it. But if you are somewhat detached by the outcome, in the sense that, look, I am trying my best and that's all I can do. If it is bound to happen, it will. I will keep on trying. You will naturally start to experience a kind of a wave of peace and calm wash over you, and you will experience that quietude of the mind. Then, if that happens, in that quiet sense, in that quietude, you are unlikely then to do wrong things that you will regret later on. So, what constitutes a sin? A sin is a deeper question, said the master. So, a fundamental thing would be, when we hurt somebody, when we are hurting, harming, injuring anybody in any way, at least intentionally, that is perhaps a sin. But is it really? Said the master. If a soldier is standing at the border and he shoots the enemy, have they committed a sin or not? And that is the very basis of the whole Mahabharata, that the notion of what is right and what is wrong can never be marked in black and white. And that is what the world religions have tried to do eternally, checking everybody in guilt. See, so how to redeem ourselves? Wisdom, knowledge, awakening will set you free, my dear. But there is a difference between knowledge and understanding. There is a huge difference. When you are awakened, you develop the understanding. If you are just well read, or you have heard a lot of people and so on, you are well educated or not, you may be just knowledgeable. And here is the difference. Please remember. In knowledge, you know what you can do and what all you can do. But in understanding, you know what you have to do. In knowledge, you know the options, you know the path, and as a consequence, there is a great confusion as well. But in understanding, there is no confusion. You understand. It is like when you first learned arithmetic and you went through some sums of, some equations of addition, and you said, Okay, 2 plus 2 is 4, 2 plus 4 is 6, and so on. But the moment you developed the understanding of 2 plus 4 is actually 6 and why it is 6 and so on, you are never confused, my dear. Anytime anybody would ask you these three questions as to what is the right answer for 2 plus 4 equals question mark, what is it? A, B, C, four answers. You would immediately pick what is right. That understanding comes over a period of time with sustained contemplation, some grace, and committing to a life of wisdom. There was a philosopher, and once he met his friend who was deeply religious. He was a theologian. Now, somebody obviously who believes deeply in religion, as this theologian did, he believed that God did everything and that everything was predestined or everything is predestined. But the philosopher had a different point of view. The philosopher said, no, there is a thing called free will. If everything is predestined, then we are never responsible for all the karma that we do then. But the theologian said, well, I believe in God and everything is predestined. Then the philosopher said, okay, let us agree to disagree. Then, after 4 hours, their wives were calling and they had to go home, and he said, let us agree to disagree. And theologian said, well, I was predestined to disagree with you, but you had a free will. You could have walked away at any point of in time, but you did not. That is the end of the joking, master said. So, in other words, it is a very subtle theme, and if we simplify it, we will be doing so at the expense of ridiculing the depth of this question, because some things are always playing a role in us making a decision, but ultimately we choose our actions. Somebody who is disabled in a wheelchair is still free to choose what the meaning of disability is to him. And truly, I read this thing. The only disabling thing perhaps in life, the only real disability is to have a disabling attitude towards things, said the master. So, when it comes to what we go through in life, what is karma and how do we redeem ourselves and what is sin, I will give you this example, said the master. That one disciple asked his master the same question, and the master said, imagine you being hit with an arrow. Like, say, you are walking and out of nowhere an arrow came and hit you and pierced your shoulder. It will hurt you a lot. It will hurt. Now imagine you put it out, and before this wound heals, you are hit at the same place again. It is going to hurt even more. All of us must have experienced, not emotionally, that must have happened a million times, but physically, sometimes you get hit somewhere and you end up hitting yourself again precisely at the same point because you are avoiding really hard not to hurt yourself again there. The first arrow, the master said, are the challenges life throws at you, a lot of which are not in your control. They are set. The second arrow is how you choose to respond to what you had to deal with in the first place. that is in our control. The first wound that is inflicted upon us sometimes may not be due to our fault. You could be walking totally sane on the sidewalk in the evening, and a drunken driver comes from out of nowhere and rams his car into you, and suddenly you find yourself in the hospital for the next 6 months. You are not at fault at all, but you are suffering for some reason. You are in pain and you have to undergo the most undesirable 6 months of your life. But the moment I start or begin to question that why did this terrible time had to descend upon me, why God, why Lord, that it is natural to some degree, but that shows your ignorance. That shows somehow we believe that God's job is to be our bouncer. I will not let anything touch you. I will keep everybody away. But it is not really. Every time, in any avatara, in any incarnation, in any religion for that matter, just see how much those avatars, those enlightened beings went through in life. What was it that was going through their minds that they still held on to their faith? Not only they held on to their faith, they propounded it throughout the world's world. They stood on the rooftops and shouted top of their lungs that this divinity is real. Clearly, they had an understanding of something that the ordinary person out there does not, and that is nothing matters eventually. We don't have to take ourselves, our perspectives, our viewpoints so seriously. If you do so at your own peril. You will always be in conflict, and conflict is the basis of all human relationships. They even say all is vanity, but conflict truly is the basis of all human relationships. In every relationship, there is somehow a constant play of power and dominance over the other person. However subtle it may be, however sweet it may be, conflict can also be positive. You rub two flint stones and it will create a spark. But if you realize that this is how it is, take it or leave it, you will be less tempted to do things that you will then regret later on. And to sum it up, I will just say if you are here on this planet, that means you are redeemed, my dear. Let that sink in. If you are breathing on this planet, you are redeemed. There is some force in the universe that sees value in you, my dear. There is some force in the universe that has feelings of love for you. There is something going on in the extraordinary play of the cosmos that has decided that you are of use and therefore you cannot perish just yet, and therefore you must stay and the show must go on. Because the moment nature decides that you are of no use, we perish. The body decomposes, it is recycled. A fruit, once you know it is fallen from the tree, it will stay fresh for a little while. Then it starts to decompose, decay, and so on. Nature does not keep anything that is of no use to it. And if that is true, if you have the buy-in from the highest level, what do you really care about all the other things, all everybody else in the world? sometimes people, when they are looking for life partners, they have a question: can I marry this person? Can I marry that person? Or how do I marry? And so on. I always say, said the master, look, first develop self esteem and self love. If you have experienced void, fill that void with yourself first, and you will attract the right person then. But if somehow you are helping, I mean, if somehow you are hoping that you have created this emotional void, this gorge in your consciousness, and somebody else should come and fill it the entire life, it is too much to ask for, because life does not work that way, my dear. It never has, never will. That is not the play of the universe, concluded the master. So, thank you all.